Bella. My fingers lightly traced the shape of her lips. I will stay with you. Isn't that enough? She smiled gently under my fingertips. Enough for now. I frowned. For now, I scoffed. She was determined, but I wasn't going to concede to her wishes. I exhaled a low, thundery growl. She touched my face. Look, she breathed. I love you more than everything else in the world combined. Isn't that enough? Me too. Yes, it is enough, I answered, smiling. Enough for forever. I leaned down to press my cold lips once more to her throat. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and this time around I'm going to do a review of Midnight Sun. To tell you the truth, I fell asleep after reading the first chapter. It's kind of bad, but I read the whole thing, and here's why I fell asleep after reading the first chapter. Okay, so Midnight Sun is basically the fifth installment of the Twilight series, right? And it started out with Twilight, right? And it was I read it a couple of years back, and I was already in my 20s, and I liked it, and I always like it's like a origin story, sort of a beginning stories, and that is in the first book. That was when Bella first met with Edward, and I enjoyed it. I was not such a big fan, but I watched the movies. And I was following the actors and all that, and the actresses, Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson is going to be Batman soon. So the fifth installment, Midnight Sun, is basically a retelling of Twilight, but from the point of view of Edward. And it's you wouldn't have thought about the success. I mean, in of the book once it's launched, because I mean, if you look at the it's just been launched recently into 2020, and it wasn't launched until I believe 12 years later, right? Since the last book, and it was a decision that was I guess advantages for the author, but I still feel that there's a lot of shortcomings in writing another book that only deals with a retelling of a story in another person's point of view. So my point is, I got really bored because I read Twilight several times, and I know this story inside out, and when I read it, even though it was from Edward's point of view rather than Bella's, in the fifth installment, it still feels like a retelling of the same story, because there isn't any additional enough additional scenes that happened to Edward outside of what happened between him and Bella, which is already retold from Bella's perspective. And this is the danger. I mean, if she had released it in any other time apart from 2020, it would have probably plopped in the market. Yeah, I mean, I would say, because I mean, it's the thing. Like, even it's the same problems that people encounter when they read books in dual narratives, which means it's retold in two different characters' point of view, and it gets boring after the time if they're just focusing in the same scene, but just redoing it twice. And it's after all, it's one author who is doing it, right? It's one author who's writing it, and how much different can the perspective be if a really good author would be able to really reimagine herself as two different people and then write it, but I really didn't get into into yeah this book at all. I mean, uh, yeah, and I think the only part that I still like out of out of all the chapters was the end, which was what I wrote, what I just read to you. I mean that was the best part of the sort of the most endearing moment in the book, where she sort of like tried to, she had a death Bella has a death wish. She wants to be with Edward forever, and she doesn't want to die, and it's better to do it now because she's still young and beautiful, rather than she's doing it when you're doing it when you're like 70 years old, say for example, on your deathbed. um yeah, but I mean, that was the only good part. That was the only good part because it sort of like recalls the scene from the movie as well, with a thousand years, Christina Perry's A Thousand Years playing in the background. And yeah, no, I mean, it's not sufficient for me. I mean, I personally regret getting the book because yeah, I mean, I would not reread it again a second time. I mean, Twilight was enough, and it was a good story, and it doesn't need to be retold from Edward's point of view. Actually, you know what would be good? What would be good is actually a backstory to how Edward became a vampire. I mean, if you look at Anne Rice novels, I mean, with the vampire Lestat, she actually built up this whole world about how Lestat actually was, he was converted. When was he converted? He was converted many years ago, in many centuries ago, and that sort of became a sort of a historical horror or suspense book. Then it would have been better if it's written. Yeah, about how Edward became a vampire. I mean, somebody must have turned him, right? So, I mean, we know, but we want to have the details, the gory details as to how he became a vampire, and that would have been much better if, yeah, if it was dealt with, yeah, in the book, which it didn't. So, okay. So, I would give this book a 3 out of 5 stars, unfortunately, because I do not want to read over and over again the same plot and the same stuff. I know how Stephanie, well, I mean, it's Stephanie Meyer probably was thinking along the same line as E.L. James, right? Because E.L. James actually published Grey, which is basically a retelling of 50 Shades from the point of view of Christian Grey rather than Anastasia Steele. And again, I read both books. I read 50 Shades of Grey, and I read Grey as well. But I had the same kind of a reaction to that book, because it was basically a retelling of right, the whole plot from another person's point of view. And I felt like it would have been better if there was a back story to how Christian Grey started out in BDSM, which it would have been a lot more interesting. It was created in that way, but I think the author wasn't thinking about it. So there is a backstory to Midnight Sun. Why is it released into 2020? Well, I mean, it was supposed to be released a lot earlier, many years before, but apparently the manuscript draft was actually leaked on the internet somehow. I have no idea how, but yeah, so a lot of people could actually read it online for free at that time. But no, it's yeah. I mean, unfortunately, like, nothing came out of it. And then a couple of years later, when in like this year, when she actually published it, people are actually buying it, and are giving it positive reviews. Yeah, but okay, so that's basically all that I could say about Midnight Sun. Although I'm a pretty big Twilight fan, I'm rather disappointed in it. Yeah. Okay, until next video then. Thank you.